If you lick me at a specific point, planetary or personally, I will talk only in musical phases, stotting fragments, or the mapping of memory and imagination onto present experience. If you had the choice between experiencing yourself or everything else, what? Or explain yourself as fiction, or graffiti, or a series of letters etched into the landscape, body froth, a good paranoid shag as critique of the dictionary forever buzzing in our ears. This is not a padded paper house. There is no refuge to be had in the separation of artistic, social and sexual desires, or a stone to soak up the groaning protein interference. We are condemned to speak by the same causes that drive the world into war, to determine which ideas are taken to market: radio waves, muscle, crotch split. Poetry is investigation of the autoconical consciousness of street names, interpreted as static space signals, are made only from pure chemicals, manipulated by the unanimous horror felt at the words "this is an erotic poem." No, start with a thing. No, do something else. Hermetic politics. Think the sexual, the literary and the economic all at once or never. Tower, suck, fur. Internalise that trajectory as the 30th Olympiad is now fixed identity, a frozen point on the social horizon, as pituitary implant reciting a solid history of these islands, understood as a small pebble kept in my mouth until used in various erotic games known in your house as chatter. Chemtrails. Would Mercury really be unsuitable for making coins? And then the dream account turned out to be a real memory. Ink rubbed directly into the microphone for broadcast x-rays of buttercups, excluded from social reality, or the study of what a given society can countenance as meaning, thigh to eyelid, rib to toe to tongue, etc. The abstract addressee is meteor pulp, a small room with no windows, sphincter cycle unfulfilled, used as convenient consensus, making it impossible to subvert the idea of Western letters. The avant-garde is considered elitist by people who go to concerts in Smith Square. For all its talk about work, capitalist thought always takes the line of least resistance. And this line of least resistance creates hermetically sealed environments, the weather system and human circulation, negative mesmerism, the star as antimatter, made obvious by the flashbulbs and explosions that happen every time they encounter social reality. Histology, or cities like stars go out with a vacuous moral certainty that money gives access to. On the other hand, my group consists of a few people long dead, some not yet born, and 5 or 6 contemporaries. I'm working on a campaign to get London twinned with Fallujah. The voice in the poem is not your friend. Yeah, that's right.
Would it work as good if you write really slowly? I think it would.
It would go on a lot longer. I'll finish up with a bit of a section of this book called Tracts and Commentaries, a lecture. I was in a really bad mood when I was writing this one. This book is just a huge tantrum. Tracts and Commentaries, a lecture, has a little picture of some pylons on Hackney Marshes there. Frame by frame scrutiny of videotape revealed no sign we had used our spittle as a fashion word in the city as glue. Epigraph. Anger is nothing. To me, fear is much more. Miri Baraka, 1965. Think ghost shit as a set of rooftops imposed on other systems of twitching in public. Our language is also that debased. Think cancer as radical nostalgia for legitimate ruins like the letter I. Words are spit. Material speech is shelter from panic, or to say I love with necessary meaning is inhuman, and distance passed from face to face of any city's split worlds of cells and talk invents entitlement or singularity. The stoic shudder eclipsed at last. The last tingle of that shameful but essentially boring public murder has been pressed into our conceptual holes like some outre but entirely conformist entertainment. And thus, London is once more rendered virtually unreal as my mouth pressed inside your ear is a slightly radioactive chirrup of love, cut from the rejectimenta of separable time zones, and pulse rings of an ecstatically intimate syllabic charge, endorsed by several leading high street banks who claim the shudders we feel are perfectly illegal, sampled from within this infested and private discourse scat is a forced community of rope and wood and dislikes most of you. We know that contemporary poetry is gentrified, is no longer forced to move out due to rising rent. They, happier, are about as interesting as digital radio, panic, twang, rub extracted. There's legitimacy in an unreal world, one that does exist and has convinced us that it does not. There is civil war there. Bush knew what he was doing. Or amazing how a bunch of fraudulent cowboys can, with inky reams and strange pitch can, say that it's the last days and say that language can do that much for a bunch of shit-scared academics. My financial body is a length of greased rope, hooked inside love as the most useful style of spasm floods milk is seizured, largely political holes with reform for money. It's 10 o'clock in London, New York and Beirut, which gives you the idea last night I was a slight and infected string or circle inside another person's memory twitches in sleep, still largely closed at me, where M punches E, below a surge of talk on how this singular and infinitely dense ball would boil and pop. The pronoun cluster is jagged as ink on the atlas of time's collected hysteria. Or to conflate de Boer and Villon, neuralization, poetic politics. That particular inversion made us puke, so we booted the verb out of the sentence to represent its internal opposite. Obviously, all the nouns became verbs, and then there were verbs amassed at the border. The image cracked. The logical conclusion of my books is that of struck glass, not the fragment. Love, love, love. It might interest you. A day trip to poetry might clarify its curdle. What if this landscape were generally available? It has not been blown apart. All explosions have been contained, and where the snows of yesteryear, etc. Consciousness is socially determined. Cheers.